If you were to go and ask your grandmother, hey, Grandma, will you write a book and put dozens and dozens of stories about your past and growing up together? I think that'd be great to share with the family. It's going to seem, oh, I don't want to do that. But the same thing pitched as, hey, will you respond back to a question in an email? Bjorn, what's happening? Welcome back to another episode of Life Money You podcast.
Yeah, how you doing? Nice
Not
to
bad.
see you and hear you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Before we get started, we got to start with something fun here. So this is a really good one. I hope you enjoy.
I'm prepping myself.
What did the grape say when it was stepped on? Nothing. It just let out a little whine.
And that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for joining us.
And mic drop that. It's from my dad joke book, a very important tool to have around the house. So very important.
I actually have an observation about habits for you.
Okay.
I have a really bad habit of screaming at the top of my lungs during a physical exam. It's really starting to make my patients nervous.
I like that. That's good. If I told my daughters that, they would be like, I don't get it. And then you
You're
just
like,
go down the rabbit hole. Exactly.
You're like,
Yeah.
well, it's kind of a visualization. So those were amazing. And if you were looking for incredible value by joining this podcast, you just got it. But you and I are actually going to talk a little bit more about habits in a book that both of us read a little while back, but decently recently here. And that is the book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's actually a fairly famous book, although I had not read it up to this point that we read it together for this. But I kind of wonder, what did you think of it? High level, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah. I don't typically read books that are so well known and liked. I don't know why. I guess there's just so many books to read out there, but this one has rave reviews. It's a bestseller. I've known a lot of people that have read it, and I think it fits obviously in the skill set wheelhouse that we're experts on too, to some level. I think overall, though, it was quite good. There was a lot to it. He had a lot of tips. So I like that. I feel like I need to go back to it and take some more notes, or at least consult the book. And maybe that's the point. It's supposed to be a little bit of a guidebook, help you get started, and then you come back. It's an easy read, but it's hard to remember everything, I guess, was my point. There was just so many different things there. It felt like a little bit of a fire hose of different tips and tricks, but probably one of the more practical books that I've read, though, lately. We've read some good ones about financial independence. I know we've talked about those here, but this one, I think, definitely you've got a key you could even follow on some different ways to set goals, reach goals, like how to get there. Overall, really liked it. I listened to the audiobook version of it, but I think he might have even read the audiobook version of it. So it was awesome. Really great.
Yeah, I want to say, I think he has been writing about habits for a long time, and the book is a accumulation of a lot of the stuff that he's written. So in many cases, I feel like business books or self-help books or productivity books talk about the top level and then try to convince you to do stuff. And I really felt like this book was a little bit different in that maybe we all agree that better habits are something we should embrace. But his book, like you said, was just do this, trigger with this, cue this, make it stick with this. And so it was just a lot less about trying to convince, I think, the reader or the consumer sometimes that you should think about this, you should do it, and just more of how you can do it. And I think if you're reading a book about habits, you're probably wondering how to do that anyway. And for us in this space, in the financial wellness space, we talk a lot about goals. We've heard many presentations on SMART goals. We've talked a lot about making habits, right? Spending habits, shopping habits, all of these things. I want to start out with a pretty basic question here. And I think if you were to ask most people, how do you make a habit? Most people would say, hey, if you just do something for 30 days straight, it'll become a habit. After reading this book, or based on your experience with working with people, what say you on that?
Yeah, it's like the general rules of thumb out there in personal finance. I would say that macro level, I think those statements and those rules of thumb can work. They can work for some people. I think if you do something for 21 days or 30 days or whatever it is, it's possible that could become an ingrained behavior in your life. And I would say, I think it just is a little bit too basic or high level. I think there's more going on there, and that's what he gets into in the book. So I think in general, that can work. It can be great. My personal experience is that there's just too much volatility or unpredictability in my life sometimes to have total control over doing something for 30 days. And so the times where I've tried to do that, like exercising or saving or reading or whatever it is, it has been really hard for me to get that many days in a row. And so then if you use that reasoning, then you just say, you did 20 days, not 21. So you didn't hit the magic number and it won't be ingrained. But I know he goes a lot deeper in a lot of kind of different places to help peel the onion back a little bit on what actually is happening and why that actually can work for people. But I actually would say today that it's not really the number of days that you do something that makes it stick for you. It actually is some other factors that I think we're going to maybe talk about here.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. In fact, I see a lot of people doing stuff, challenging themselves to do something for a month on TikTok or Instagram. And the funny thing is, once they finish their challenge, I don't ever see them posting about it again. So it shows, I think, the idea of just forcing yourself to do something, what is the value of that? And I think he talks a lot, and we'll get into it here, a little bit more about how you actually make that a part of your life. And that's really the key. I
Yep.
also want to bring up the word here because I think the other thing we get maybe tempted by is these big grandiose habits. And the book is called Atomic Habits. And he says that he likes the word atomic for two reasons. One, because there's like the atomic particle, very small. And yet when we think about the atom bomb or atomic energy, right? Super powerful. Very small things can be very powerful. I like that analogy. And I think one of the things that he starts off with that really resonated to me, because I've written some presentations on looking back on how I've achieved some of the things that I never thought I'd be able to achieve, right? And what are the similarities? And for me, in a lot of cases, I never had a goal to do this or this. It was just, I liked being in that moment and doing some of these things. And he talks about those small, powerful, atomic decisions that you make on a daily basis, maybe an hourly basis, and the effects of compounding over time. What did you think about that? That change comes from the compound effects of hundreds of small decisions or habits over time.
Yeah, I think he's totally spot on. And yet I think it is hard for us average people to stick with things like that because what we see in social media, what we see in the news are people accomplishing massive goals, right? Like we read the story of the person that climbed Mount Everest. We only hear about the kind of extremes. We don't hear about the mom who lost 15 pounds or the dad who started up his own business or whatever it is. We don't hear about the average Joe person that accomplishes something, and nor do we necessarily view those as shareable goals that they accomplished. But to your point and to his point, sometimes we almost fall into these massive accomplishments because of daily things that we've decided to do. And the other thing I was going to say is that it is difficult, I think, as a person to feel like something is significant enough to count toward some of these larger accomplishments. But like when I'm coaching people, I oftentimes will bring up different health analogies just because financial health and physical health are just so closely tied. And the one that I've overused it probably too much, but it's a good analogy is if you came to me and you wanted to get stronger and you thought that in order to do that, you needed to do 50 push-ups a day. Let's just say it was either 50 or 0. What if I asked back to you, do you think that 15 push-ups a day would be better than 0? Most people would say yes. And that might be a more doable amount for you to accomplish every day. And imagine if you did 50 7 days a week. I think that's 100 or close to 100. It's 90. It's close. It's a little bit over 100, 105. So that would be quite a few. That might be more than you could do if you tried to do 50 and you missed a few days because you couldn't get it done. Or you just stopped before you even started. So by breaking it down, it's so easy to accomplish. You can get actually, like you said, more done per day. And that in and of itself, those daily decisions can compound like crazy over a span of a year, of a week, of a month, of a few months, whatever it is. Imagine if you were able to save $5 per day and you literally put that aside every single day, you would potentially end up with more saved at the end of the month than the average person thinks that they can save every month because you just broke it down into daily amounts. So I love what he says there. It's hard to think like that because we're so conditioned to set like the big goal and not really come up with the process to get to the goal.
I think you're spot on. And I think there are a lot of things that we do that are pretty grandiose in the scheme of things, but we don't even give ourselves credit for it. I have a question for you. If I were to ask you to accumulate 9 tons worth of stuff, we're midway through the year here. By this time next year, could you accumulate 9 tons worth of materials? Let's say I asked you to accumulate 9 tons of cardboard between now and this day next year, or bricks, or whatever it might be, copy paper. Do you think that would be an unachievable goal? Or do you think like you'd be like, I could do it?
My honest answer right off the bat would be like, no way. If we're talking like cardboard, that's like, how would I do that? Where would I get it? Like, where could
Yeah.
I put it? It's
And,
just, that feels
and I
like a
bring that
lot.
up not because look, I'm asking you to collect cardboard or books or toys, or but 9 tons seems like a lot. But I was just looking up some average stats for the average American. And the average American produces 1.5 tons of trash each year. And you're in a household of 6 people. So you guys, without thinking about it, autopilot, the incidental stuff that you don't even give a second thought to, probably produces 9 tons of garbage, maybe, or trash, or, you know, but it's like, I think
Sorry,
about
Mother
this.
Earth.
Yeah, it's mostly biodegradable. It's mostly paper,
Exactly.
compost. But I take out my garbage every weekend to make sure that it's picked up by the garbage collection company. It's a habit. It's not one that I necessarily want to do, but it's one that I'm going to do. It seems like a pain at the time. It probably takes me 2 minutes to take the trash cans in the recycle bin out to the curb, and then a couple minutes to bring it back in and put it in. But I do it every week. And you think about those small things, right? So I have a household of 3. So maybe we're producing 4 or 5 tons of trash each year. But to think about, I've moved now 4 or 5 tons of stuff just in a few minutes a week. And that's not even something we give thought to. The wrapper that you take off of your lunch or your yogurt container, all these small things, really, if you look at the long term of it, and that's just over 1 year. What if we looked at those numbers over a lifetime, or your kid's lifetime too, right? That's where I think the power of these things, and you talked about money, when now it's not just the accumulation of it, but it's the accumulation with compound interest, with it working for us on our behalf. So that's where it starts to dawn on me, man, the power of, like you said, and that's why I want to get back to it, just having a process, taking out the garbage, bringing the garbage can back in, can actually lead to amazing achievements, even though we're not handing out trophies yet. But your Life Money You trash collection trophy is being minted right now. But I want to talk about processes, because I think another important thing about this, and I was looking at really the second big point here, is to achieve goals, we need to build systems made of single processes that will take us towards our goals. Can you elaborate on what you thought about processes that are conducive to us making progress towards things?
Yeah. Yeah. I think per your earlier point of building it into your life, I think that is probably one of the most important keys that you could ever do. And I know that as coaches, that's probably one of the harder things that we have to try to help people overcome is how do you build in a new process into somebody's life where they haven't been doing that process for a long time, or they don't like it. They don't want to do that process. And that takes some initial things to get it going. But one trick is that you can, like you said, you can couple it up with something else that you're already doing, or you can just make it so easy that it's very easy to add it in. It takes 1 minute. It's dentist wants you to floss your teeth. Like, just do it before you brush your teeth. You're already brushing your teeth. Like, it adds 2 more minutes. Like, why not just do that? The best example that I have of this in my own life is, I was trying to think of the year. I think it was 2009. we did a weight loss challenge at work, and we all put in $20. We did it based upon percentage of original weight so that you could make it equal across different weights. We weighed in every week. And what I wanted to do, because I did want to lose some weight, build in a process that I could maintain after the fact, because I knew that it would be pretty sad if I lost weight and then just gained it right back. That would be really deflating because I don't know,
Technically, it would be very inflating.
yes, it'd be very inflating. Yes. Good point. And so what I did is I reached out to the person that won the contest the year before and I asked, what'd you do to do this? And what he told me was that he actually sped up his metabolism by eating small meals throughout the day. And I was like, I could probably do that. And what I did is I didn't like completely change my entire life. I just took the lunch that I brought in every day and I just ate half like in the morning and then half in the afternoon, basically. I just spread it out for the whole day. So it was the same lunch, but I just ate it differently. And that combined with a lot more exercise, but those two alone, and the equation is relatively simple, calories in and calories out, I actually ended up winning the entire challenge, which was really awesome. And I was the only person who a year after had kept it off. Everybody else had gained it back. And I kept it off because I built a system, a process that worked. And I could just keep doing it every single day. And it wasn't a whole lot of extra effort. I just built it right into my life. So that was just a great example to me of what it can look like for people. And it doesn't have to be some crazy, like super creative, brand new idea. It was just eat your lunch in incrementally small bites throughout the day. And that ended up really working out for me.
I think that's a great example because if you think about what would that do in that day, almost virtually nothing.
Yep.
It's almost in the second day, the third day, 10th day. It doesn't really matter. It's the time piece of it. It's the small atomic activity that you did that over time had that huge effect, right? And could also integrate in your life. The other thing I was going to ask you about is there was a period of time that I don't think you were really reading books on the regular. And then we got into a space where we were starting to read more and you shifted over to Audible. I'm curious, how has that been to integrate into your life? And then also, would you say that's elevated your ideas, your thinking, your creativity, your ability to come up with new ideas, all of those types of things? And has that kind of fit that same model of stretching out the meal over the day?
That's a really good point that it's very similar. And honestly, I've had a hard time getting excited about reading my whole life. I was always more of a active person, wanted to play sports, wanted to go golf, wanted to do whatever and play with friends. It was hard to just sit there and read a book. And so I had to know enough about myself to figure out what was going to work. And I knew that I like listening to podcasts. I like listening to things. I actually like books on CD for the most part. So I knew that would work for me because I know for some people that doesn't really work. They don't learn very well by listening to books. They have to read them. And so it wouldn't work for everyone. But for somebody that can comprehend what they're listening to and enjoys that, then it was just figuring out a way that I could fit it into my really busy life where I didn't have to just like literally set aside time to just listen to the book and do nothing else. I had to be able to be doing something else. So I listen when I'm exercising. I listen when I'm driving, traveling. It's just like all the gaps in the day when you're not connecting with somebody else or with the family or whatever. And it's been amazing. I would have never guessed that I could pour through books as fast as I have been able to. And the fact that you can speed up how quickly you listen to it, that's been a game changer as well. It started with just knowing what was going to work to some level, but then it was also just taking a leap of faith, having some accountability too, because we talk about books. I knew that I had to read some for other purposes. And so that was helpful to make sure that I got through them. But I was able to get through dozens of books, more than I would have if I hadn't taken this step. And it's just fit into other spots of life that I already have, or you're like waiting at the DMV or you're waiting for somebody to call you or whatever. You can just listen for a little bit. It's like the small meal, like you said, throughout the day where it's not rocket science and it almost doesn't seem significant enough. That's the real challenge with this is that if I look too often at my progress, I might get discouraged because it's like in one day, I did not make very much progress, like reading a book or I ate a few less calories. But if you have a regular period of checking in, like every month or every couple of months or something, where you can start to see how those have added up over time, it can be really motivational, to be honest, to see, wow, like I did that for many, many days. Not a perfect 30, not a perfect 21, but I might have done it for 18 days. And not that the number of days is important, but I just have built in this process now of something that works into my life. And oh my goodness, look at how much progress has happened when it's felt like I've literally done nothing or very insignificant steps to get there.
I'm curious, how long have you been subscribing? I think we both use Audible, but has it been 6, 7, 8 months maybe or something like that?
Yeah, yeah, it's something like that. I can't remember. It was somewhere like in the fall of last year. So just
Okay.
call it, I don't call it 9 months.
9 months. And how many books do you think you have crushed through in those last 9 months?
Yeah, I think it's over 20. I don't know the exact number. It's getting close to 2 dozen.
Yeah. I mean, so if someone had asked you, knowing who you are and your tendencies, and said, listen, Bjorn, over the next year, how many books do you think you could read? Would you have said maybe a few?
I would have
And,
said 2, 3, maybe. And
and
now I'm,
now you've
yeah,
10x that. And in a way where you said, I feel like I'm cheating. It's a little bit like people that I talk to that exercise regularly because they always do it at say 4 a.m. or whenever. They have made it a part of their life, whether they're on vacation or not, and they don't feel like they're exercising because in many cases, some of these people that I've talked to only do it for 15 minutes. It's not about getting an hour in. It's about making that habit regular, and they feel like, oh, I just started. I've heard very similar words like you, like, I feel like I'm cheating the system. I feel like I haven't done anything. And yet, man, you get all of that time benefit from it. And you're just scratching the surface. I think the other thing that I wanted to bring up here from the book is he talks about making it fun. I guess sometimes we're always in the habit of thinking, hey, if I should do it, it can't be fun. And in the case of you reading books, yeah, there are some books we've talked about to read together for this podcast for the benefit of our program or the company or the people that we work with. But there are many times when you can just add whatever book tickled your fancy to your queue, kind of like Netflix. And should we feel bad about that? Getting something, gaining ideas from a book that, gosh, we enjoyed too, right? Couldn't it just be something that's fun and enjoyable and improves us as people?
totally. That's where I think one of the better ways to just start a new habit or building in a process rather than start a habit or set a goal or whatever, but just add a new process into your life. I don't get excited about processes, but I do really believe in it for this purpose is look for the concentric circles in your life. So where do you have, so like for me, golf, right, is like it's my special thing I get to do on my own. I have friends that I do it with. It's very fun. It's our outside golf opportunities in Minnesota are very limited. So that also is fun to get out. And if I can just find different ways to bring all of those together and then figure out a way to do something fun that hits a lot of those at once, because as a really busy parent and employee, and I serve at my church, like there's not much time to do anything else. And so the only practical way to do it right now is by adding it into the gaps of life or do something that you love during a time when you've got something else going on. So if you are a parent, bring your kids along, have them join you. Or if you're riding in the car with them, listen to something that you want to for once, but you're still with them. And so there's just ways you can have good use of your time and use it in a few different ways if it's limited. And that's what I try to do.
So I hear what you're saying. So when your girls do something that deserves a reward, you take them to Top Golf and put them on the couch and let them watch you hit balls into the tournament.
Yes.
So
Yes,
wonderful.
exactly.
I love it. Very selfless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
No,
love it. They love
I,
it.
I agree. I remember when I was studying for my securities licenses, reading those books is not that much fun. You really had to do it. It's like a textbook. There's a lot of kind of dry information in there. And so what I did was I took something that was fun. There was a computer game that I liked playing at the time. I'm not really big into computer games now, but for every chapter I would read, I would give myself an hour of computer time. And I wouldn't get that unless I read that chapter. And so I just feel like that kind of changed my habits, because if there's no end to it, if there's no like optimistic or happy outlook to it, every page is drudgery. But if I look and I'm like, okay, there's 11 pages here, I can knock this out if I just put my mind to it, and that I don't have to worry about page 12. I'm only going to do these 11 pages. That really changed the game for me in studying for that, because I actually started really flying through it, because I knew that if I started playing my game, I got to an hour, I was going to have to pause it. There was no more game until I went back and I knocked out the next chapter. You might say, hey, that's pretty inefficient, Pete. You're adding an hour on to every chapter where you could have read it, but it's just the willpower. There are probably a lot of things that we could do if we didn't have boredom to contend with, or disinterest, or any of those. So I definitely think that there are ways to make it fun, even if there isn't a lot of intrinsic fun in the task, i.e., taking out the garbage to me is not fun. But if I attached a TV to it and watched clips from The Office while I was taking it out, maybe I'd slow roll the garbage cans out to the curb too. You never know. So that's a nice little hack. I wanted to ask you a question here. We do some financial coaching with people. We've worked with a lot of people over time. Actually, now, having thought about your experience with the weight loss, the book reading, and the idea of having a process, focusing on the small actions that compound over time, would this change your advice, or has it evolved your advice if you were working with someone? Say, I'm a client and I'm coming in, I'm saying, Bjorn, I've got this goal. I want to lose some weight, or man, I want to get that promotion at work and really improve myself, or whatever it might be. There are a lot of times that we're working with people and they have a goal, maybe a savings goal, financial goal, whatever it is. Would this kind of change maybe what you would try to serve up to them while working with them?
I think to some level for sure, because what's hard, obviously, as somebody that has done this for a long time, you do have financial expertise on things that have worked and haven't worked. And I think that is important to tap that when you need to. But if it's a concept that somebody understands, let's just say it's, I don't know, just for ease, like it's saving toward a big trip or something. It's not conceptually hard to know what you need to do. Like they have a desire to do it. Let's just say it's $5,000. It's a really big trip. They're going to go overseas for a couple weeks or whatever. And it's this huge trip and they're not sure how to get there and they need to do it in a year or whatever. Let's just say it's a short time frame. My tendency would be to just use the math and just go, okay, 5,000 divided by 12, let's get to your number and figure out how much you need to put aside. And okay, what account you need to put it in. Okay, let's automate it. But I think what it does is it allows me to be more creative with somebody and try to ask a few more questions to really figure out what's going to work for them. Because it's possible that after you dig a little more, you figure out that, I don't know, that person has tried to save for things in the past like that and it hasn't worked. But maybe all of a sudden you discover that they have a really great skill that somebody would pay for and they could sell that skill and it's worth $5,000 over the next year because it's a side gig or something. And I would have never necessarily thought to go there first, but by working with someone and asking a few more questions to get them to be creative about how you can make it happen, you can maybe get them to a spot where they're more willing to go through with it because it's more fun. And it's something that they've been thinking about or that they've already built in, or maybe they have something in their house that's worth that much and they were never thinking that they would sell it, but then you help them think about the ROI. Is it worth hanging on to this $5,000 thing? Or would I rather go on this big experience? And I think the experience would be better. Let's sell it. Boom, it's taken care of. So I think it opens me up a little bit to be willing to kind of brainstorm with somebody. And I think that can actually be a better situation in the end because there's places for advice where someone's asking, tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. And you give them something to go with. But there's also a place for somebody that maybe is willing to be creative, to think through what the different options are. And then they end up in a spot where it's really going to work for them. And they either are fitting it into their life or they're going to be more able or willing to fit it into their life. And then you get to that goal and it was like something I never even thought of was even on the table.
I totally agree. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but sometimes we talk about, like in financial coaching, celebrate achieving the goal. Like, oh, once you've saved that emergency fund, you should do something. I'm almost thinking now that it's not really the end achievement that you should celebrate. Not that you shouldn't, but it's like, what are the smaller things that you could celebrate all along the way? Like after every event, like we talked about, saving a few $100s a month is probably not an easy thing to do, but maybe saving a few dollars a day. That's still just the math of it, right? We still haven't
Yeah.
talked about how to get people to do it or even want to do it. And I was thinking about movies that come out or a TV show that comes out, right? Let's say something is really interesting. If you're a Game of Thrones fan or you love a new Magnum PI, or maybe after every week of putting $20 away in savings, you get one new episode of your show, but you don't until you get there, right?
Yeah.
I guess what I realized after this book is it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to the point of the savings, right? Like I feel like sometimes I get stuck with, why should I reward you with ice cream for saving money? You should be doing that on your own. But if you love ice cream, if you love having the family outing or whatever it is, after reading this book, I'm taking it like, who cares? If that gets you the result that you want, if that gets you on that path to progress and the results can be so massive, why wouldn't you do whatever you can? Just life hack it so that
Right.
you make the changes that you need to make your habits contribute to your overall financial well-being, your overall happiness.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like that celebrating along the way idea too. And I think this is not a fully formed thought, but it got me thinking about how often we hear about the one resource that nobody can get more of is time. And that is very true. But we should celebrate it when people are able to add helpful, healthy processes into their life, because as you get older, there just become more choices usually. And a lot of them are really good choices. Like, is it better to spend my 1 hour at home with my family? Is it better for me to go and visit my grandmother? Should I spend that hour with extended family? Should I take that hour and go get better at golf? It can be hard to figure out where the best ROI is on the hour if we're just talking in that currency. But I was just thinking, when you hear someone who is able to build in a process that, like your friends, it's not really that they only spend 15 minutes exercising, but the fact that they're able to get it to a level where they actually do it every day, that starts to become pretty darn impressive when you start adding that up over the course of weeks and months. And you say to people like, yeah, I exercised 48 straight days, or you start to see just massive progress. I don't know why, but I was thinking of the art of writing a handwritten note to people and how that's gone. But imagine if you just wrote one handwritten note per day. Like, that's very doable. It takes just a couple minutes. That is so many handwritten notes per year. I mean, when you just
one
start,
a week,
I know, one a week. Yeah.
52 people getting a personalized.
Think about it, like in your just kind of immediate circle, there's probably 52 people. Like, everybody could get a handwritten note throughout the year, and it would be so meaningful because it's such a lost form of communication in some ways, and it has a extra place of value now. It's those little things when you break them down, and then you start to realize that people get so busy. But I think maybe we're approaching it all the wrong way, because we're setting these big goals and then we're trying to back into those goals by putting our time up against what it would take to get there. It doesn't feel possible because it's like, oh, I'm just too busy. You just quickly lose the momentum. But we should really celebrate when somebody is able to build in a process, even if it's just a really small process, like writing one note per day, because that can fit in to most people's days. And it could result in some massive ROI for your mental well-being, health well-being, your family's well-being. It's really mind-blowing, actually, when you start to go down this rabbit hole and think about areas of your life that you want to get better at, and how often we approach it with like, we just get stuck on either the goal or we get stuck on the amount of time that it's going to take. And we forget that maybe you can do it a different way that actually is much easier, and focus on that to get there. And then the compounding or additive results of that will actually get you there. And you won't even barely realize that it happened because you've just built it into your life.
I think you are spot on time. Actually, I want to share this quote from the book with you and our listeners. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. Good habits make time your ally. Bad habits make time your enemy. I think you're spot on. We all get this time, and I feel a little bit like time is a tool. And if you leverage it fully or leverage it a little, that is still better than not leveraging it all, right? So I think, like you said, I feel like I've cheated. I feel like I haven't done any reading, but you have. You've taken those 5 minutes while walking the dog, or the 5 minutes while you're getting out of your car, walking to the office, or whatever it is. And those minutes add up. And like I said, maybe we feel like we're cheating because we're not fully pouring ourselves into it. We're not making a 40-hour a week job out of it. But man, the compound effects of that. I want to ask you a question here. I think you might know where I'm going with this, but so many times if we think about, hey, I want to do something in my life, I want to document it, like you were talking about the notes. Can you tell me a little bit about Storyworth? And is
Mm,
Storyworth an example of atomic habits in action?
totally. That's a really great call on an example. So I told you about Storyworth. I promise I'm not getting any commission on this.
Look, I
I
am.
are you
I'm
okay?
shopping for yachts right now.
Right, all
So go
right.
ahead and sign up for Storyworth under my account slash
Make
Peter.
sure you use promo code Peter.
Right,
Yes,
exactly
promo
right.
code Peter.
It adds
There-
50% to the price.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
but that's the only
right.
way I can make these things happen. I just wanted to tell you that you turned me onto this almost a year
Yeah,
ago. I just got to notice that my parents that I subscribed to are now coming to an end. So it's funny because I feel like we just talked about it and now
interesting.
we're
Wow.
closing it up and moving on to the next stage. But I think a lot of people probably have not heard of Storyworth. I had not until you had brought it up. You might have to start at the beginning here, but I think
Yeah.
it speaks to small habits.
First off, it's one of those business ideas. Like when I watch Shark Tank, I'm like, oh man, that's such a good idea. What a cool idea. What a meaningful business and what a genius idea. So you sign up for a subscription, you give it to usually like a loved one in your life. It's great for parents, grandparents, lots of different situations. It'd be great for somebody that has been diagnosed with a difficult illness. It has very wide reach of who it can get to. But what the idea is, it feeds questions to the person that you've given it to every week and it goes to their email and then they respond to those questions. And then after a year, so 52 responses, it actually compiles all of those questions and answers into a book. And so what happened was my parents and my dad's siblings all went in on gifting this to my grandmother to record her life story essentially and put it in a book for all of us. And I just got done reading it a couple weeks ago and it is a treasure. Like it is an absolute treasure. I've heard some of the stories, but then there were a lot that I had not heard. And what's really neat is that throughout them writing a response to these questions, they can actually choose who they send it to. Throughout the whole year, you can just get once a week these emails. And some of them are funny questions. I think there's a different choice on what is asked, but you can read their responses as you go. And then at the end, like I said, it puts it into a book. And then that person that compiles it can actually go a step further and get more copies of that book to gift to other people. So in my grandmother's case, she worked with my uncle to add pictures because it was all about our Swedish heritage and kind of just the whole growing up. And she grew up on a farm and just went through a lot of really unique, difficult challenges. And so she cataloged all that. She added pictures into this book and then gifted one to everybody in the immediate family as just a passing down of the heritage and a passing down of her story. And what an amazing book to get to read and really hear a thoughtful response from my grandmother, but then to have it for the future. I just would highly recommend it to everybody that has someone in their life that they want to learn more. And of course, you want to do it when somebody's able to remember some of those kind of fun details from their childhood or whatever. But it's such a cool idea. So, yeah, you break it up. So, to connect it to our topic here, you're breaking it up over 52 weeks. I know she felt like it was a little daunting when it was explained to her, like, yep, it's going to be every week for the whole year, but it was very doable. It's just like writing one email back, essentially, and then they do all the work for you. Or I'm sure it's all automated to some level. And that's it. You just put it all together and there you go. You got your book about your life story. And I just told you about it because I thought you like things like this. And I know that some listening will be super intrigued by this. So if you go to storyworth.com, I think you can check it out and they've got different packages and see what is there. And I'm sure we'll put the link here in the show notes.
It's a really genius business. I totally agree with you. If you were to go and ask your grandmother, hey, grandma, will you write a book and put dozens and dozens of stories about your past and growing up together? I think that'd be great to share with the family. It's going to seem, oh, I don't want to do that. But the same thing pitched as, hey, will you respond back to a question in an email? That's all you have to do once a week, even. And I think you can even extend it out if the person can't do that. And they can queue up 4 or 5 too and just do them all at once. So it's really fascinating what you can do with a limited amount of time. And when I think about that, and now, like I said, both my parents are basically finished with theirs. And I think about, all right, they've each done about 50 emails, 50 of these stories. How many emails do we send out in a day, in a week for work, right? How many volumes of books could we have written if we had put that same effort towards something else? And I think it's probably the same for a lot of people. The amount of texting, writing, emails, blogging, commenting on social media, you could probably put out lots of materials, books, and things like that, and they just don't even know about it. You don't sometimes realize how much those small habits with the multiplier of time can really do. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's kind of
Yeah.
interesting is that some of the siblings of my parents that were copied on the responses have gotten so into it. It's almost like a TV show for them, right? Because they get to relive some of these moments that some of those siblings have forgotten. My mother had a story about getting stranded because her car broke down while she was driving to college or something across the state, and her brother came and helped her. And they transferred all the stuff to his car. And what a great story that brings back memories for them. And they had forgotten about it. And so now all my aunts and uncles want to do it too. So what a bang up business and a great
Yeah.
way to capture some of these memories, stuff that I've never heard of, because in a lot of cases, it may seem so mundane to the person writing it, but I wasn't there. All of that is a new story to me, a new experience to me. So I'm really excited about that. So I think you were spot on. Not only does it help us, I think, in coaching and helping us with people who are trying to achieve big or small financial goals. It's really helped give me, I think, more ideas to make those a reality as opposed to just being the math guy. And hey, let's just break these down into achievable,
Yep.
small, bite sized pieces. Let's think about what we can do to incent and cue and trigger and reward and do all these things for that. So I'm really excited about this. Any final thoughts on atomic habits?
Yeah. I think that some are listening, and even the process of breaking a bigger goal down into a daily process that you could fit into your life, that might even feel like a little bit overwhelming. It's possible. I know for me, sometimes that even feels like a lot. Like, yeah, it's only 5 minutes, but like it's every day. Like, how could I do that every day? I've never done it. So, what I would encourage you is if you feel like there's something in your life that you need to work toward that's like a healthier behavior, or it's going to get you something that you've been hoping to get, or whatever it is, just get started. That is the massive hurdle that in coaching and in my own life and everywhere I look, that is the one thing that is probably the hardest thing for most people to overcome is just getting started. And also keeping in mind that it doesn't have to be perfect. Like maybe you've never exercised before or you've never saved before. And you feel like it has to be perfect. Let's just say saving for retirement. I don't know where I'd put it, or I don't even understand that stuff, or I don't know where to invest it, or I don't understand IRAs. I don't understand 401ks. I don't have a financial advisor. We come up with so many excuses to not get started. And what I just told a group of interns that we just had recently was just literally get started. If you can save $5 a day, just start automating it and getting it going. Because most people don't take that step. And then later in life, they wish that they would have. And you didn't really have to be like a genius about it. We've seen plenty of studies, read different books about average millionaires who just did a lot of boring things for a really long time. And that was it. They didn't look at their retirement. They just saved money and they just saved it over a long period of time and they retired very comfortably. And it's like not a story you'd read in the paper because it's not exciting enough, but there are tons of people that are in that situation. So the book is great, adding these processes into life, making them fun, rewarding yourself. All those things are really great. But I would even just go a step further to the start and say, just get started. Just start working towards something. And by overcoming that hurdle, what it does for you is it makes you realize that you can do it. Like, I can actually do this. And then you learn some things and then you tweak it and you adjust it to make it fit better. And then you get some momentum building, like trying to pay off debt. Like you're rolling the snowball down the hill because you're starting to see some progress. And you're like, maybe I can do this. And then you get excited about it and start working toward it. That was what happened to me with the audiobooks. I just got started. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I pounded that first book out in 5 days. Oh my goodness. If I did this like every week for the next months, I could get a couple dozen books. And so boom, just next one. And so I got motivated by literally just jumping in and getting going.
Yeah, that's great. So, whatever the first step is, it's the hardest step. Just do it. Make an imperfect action. Don't even worry if you make progress on the first step, I think. Just try it. Figure out where your interests lie and let the magnifier of time start doing its thing. And before you know it, you'll be 24 books deep in your account, or lose weight, or saving money. And it'll probably feel like you hacked it. It'll probably feel like you cheated your way there. But man, that just goes to show the power of the small and insignificant. So if you want to check out this book, we'll put a link to Atomic Habits in the description below. But otherwise, hopefully you got some ideas here that will help you on your journey. Hopefully some awesome financial goals, maybe relationship or personal goals or career goals, because I think it applies to just about everything. But that is another episode of Life, Money, You, where we talk a lot about life, a little about money, so that you can find some ideas that will help you out on your own journey. So we'll see you next time.
See you later, everyone.
Bye.